All right, I think we've got just about everyone back. Thanks for taking the time to workshop these different concepts. We appreciate everyone's thoughts, and we really recognize that the planning process has to include discussions on various components of this recreation as we move through it. So we have stayed pretty high level. Now we're starting to kind of get into the details of it, and specifically around these visitor management strategies. We'll be doing this for the next couple of meetings. So I'm going to have each of the facilitators from those groups report out just on what they heard. Really briefly, we're going to keep this to about a minute, and then we're going to go into some final thoughts and closing thoughts to close out this meeting for the evening. So I was in group one. We had a pretty robust conversation. We were exploring a number of kind of questions around roads and trails. What ideas do you have for balancing the protection of natural resources? How can we develop multi-benefit options to support various visitors' needs? And then how can recreation management strategies support all visitors? We had a lot of discussion around providing different trail types for different experiences. I think that's something we heard from the panel. We've heard numerous times from folks here, but I think universally it's something that we're hearing from all the different visitor groups, that there's an experience that they're seeking when they recreate on the watershed, and there's different ways that you provide that experience. So thinking about designing trails to be sustainable, to think about kind of redundancy that might be out there and how you might be able to reduce that redundancy in some ways, or downgrade a fire road to provide a different type of trail access, recognizing and appreciating that trails require less maintenance than a fire road perhaps, and that there's a lot of interest in volunteering. There's a lot of interest in volunteering for specific types of access. We have to kind of broaden our thinking to recreation as a whole. We all collectively have an impact regardless of where we're recreating. So we had some discussion around that. Thinking about outreach and how we can kind of promote responsible recreation in that outreach. And that really comes from all the different stakeholder and community groups as well as the district. And then we thought about just balancing the needs of all the different visitors. That was really a key point and an important component to be thinking about, that there are also visitors that aren't in the room, and we have to take them into account and consider their experiences and make sure that any kind of future conditions that we start to develop don't have a impact on other visitors. So that was kind of the conversation that we had in group one. So I'm gonna pass it over to group two to provide their kind of 1 minute breakout. So Brian, you want to give us that out?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So our discussion was focused around visitor facilities. We tried to be inclusive of talk about all facilities, though there was, of course, a talk about the roads and trails. So that the first point, how can facilities be modified or updated to protect natural resources? We discussed a more thoughtful trail design. A more thoughtful trail design could lead to less use of the social trails, which would reduce the impact on the environment. We talked a bit about the trash that's on the watershed, and we understand, given the resources of the watershed, that trash pickup is tough, but potentially could volunteers empty the bins that are farther out on the watershed and harder for the rangers to get to. Another suggestion was to reinitiate Project Restore and bring that back. And then we also discussed how can we ensure visitor facilities create an inclusive and welcoming environment for diverse community groups. And then a big talking point on this issue was addressing illegal parking. And that could help, reduce erosion and preventing cars from illegally parking on the hillsides or shoulders. And in areas where that's happening, it's very uncomfortable for cyclists to get to the watershed. And someone brought up the point of really the best way for kids to be accessing the watershed is by bike. Kids aren't driving as much these days, but if they don't have a safe way to get to the watershed, they're not as likely to go there. And then lastly, someone brought up the point of considering restoration as recreation, and that school groups and kids, if they go out to do a broom sweep or trash cleanup, it's actually fun for them. Gets them out on the site and learning more about it. So trying to find these stewardship opportunities for the younger generation and demographics that aren't currently on the watershed. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Brian. Appreciate the report out. We'll go on to Matt for group three that was exploring the minimizing recreational impacts on natural resources.
Hey, Sean, we had a really good group, a lot of good comments, a lot of good discussion. I really appreciated it. Also, we had a lot of people who pointed out that they thought the panelists that we had tonight were great and gave us a lot of good ideas that were discussed in this group. So one of the first questions we tackled was, what ideas do we have for minimizing impacts from recreation and people on sensitive natural resources? People almost universally brought up the concept that our trail system is loved to death. We need to embrace trail design and trail planning on our legacy trail system, or the system we've inherited on Mount Tam. We need to embrace an adaptive management approach, considering changing use to match users with appropriate trail design. We also need to consider the needs of wildlife, and that may mean designing areas for an absence of recreation for the benefit of wildlife. We then moved on to ask what multi-benefit solutions do we see as a potential management action for addressing impacts that people have on the landscape. The comments were that we heard great solutions from our panelists. We should consider some of the things that were brought up, like trail reroutes that would result in better design, maybe under canopy, so there's less erosion. Also, that would mean less impact on meadows and wet areas. Doing these types of trail reroutes would have a benefit of a better experience for users, not baking in the sunlight as much. And the reduced erosion would also help us with our main mission, which is ensuring a safe, clean water supply.
Great, thanks, Matt. Appreciate the report out. We'll go to group 4, that was exploring stewardship and responsible recreation. Cole, you want to do a report out there?
Yeah, thanks. We had a good discussion as well, really focused on stewardship and responsible recreation. We asked 3 different questions looking at how the community can foster a culture of responsible recreation on Mount Tam. What can we do to foster better stewardship around the interconnected systems of Mount Tam? And then what stewardship efforts that have multi-benefit outcomes benefit the environment and various user groups. And really, it boiled down to needing to build trust across and between user groups through a variety of different efforts. Really looking at potential for new programs to get people out onto the watershed, to get people who may not be typically there, and also working across user groups, having a shared calendar for volunteer opportunities and stewardship opportunities and the like for that collaboration within and between user groups. And then looking to some of our panelists and some other land managers from around the area, utilizing some of their best practices for how do they manage recreation. And then there's certainly a lot of interest in volunteering and getting out on the watershed and getting some hands dirty. So that was certainly welcomed.
Great, thanks, Cole. Appreciate the report out. All right, everyone. That was what we prepared for you today, but we are going to have a pause for public comment, or a point for public comment. If there's any closing thoughts that you might have in regards of tonight's panel discussion, what you heard, feel free to chime in. We're going to use the last 15 minutes or so. We are going to ask people to keep their comments to about 1 minute if possible. There's a lot of people in this meeting, so we want to kind of manage everyone's time. So let me put up our timer here real quick, and then we'll get started. Sorry, everyone, having a little stuck.
All right, looks like Tom Boss was the first one to raise his hand. We'll work to get you unmuted.
Am I unmuted?
Yep.
You're good, Tom.
A few comments. First, I wanted to thank all the young people that turned out tonight. You made some really great comments. Matthew from TAM in particular started out by saying, we're all here tonight because we care about this place. We want to protect it. And I think that's really crucial. At the same time, I'm looking at some of the older folks, and I'm including myself in that at 58. I was neighbors with Huey Johnson, Nona Dennis, who's on here, and Elizabeth Twilliger. And I'm not sure that a lot of the younger folks know who those folks are. So I think it's really imperative for some of the older folks that are involved in this process to share our knowledge and pass on our legacy to some of these young folks. And I do want to point out, we definitely all have an eye on conservation. It is a recreation plan. So if there's a lot of talk about that side of things, know that that's why we're focused on recreation here, but I think everybody wants to protect the mountain for many, many, many generations. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Tom. Appreciate the comment.
Mike Nettleton, you're up next once you're unmuted.
Hi, I just wanted to thank Sean and the rest of MMWD staff for hosting this, and a big shout out to the panelists. They were phenomenal, and I think we can learn a lot, both as the public and the MMWD staff as land managers from what we heard today. And I just like the focus of this evening, multi-benefit to all users, to the land itself. I think if we work together, we have a good a future ahead of us. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the comment.
Rich Peterson.
Great, thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone for such a productive meeting, and specifically to call out the panelists who I can say from experience, having been to Santa Cruz and used the trails there, it is a very active trail system. There are lots of different trail users using the trail system there, every day. They also have a very active conservation effort, and everyone gets along very well. From my experience there is very little conflict. There is some illegal trail building, might have something to do with there being a university right in the backyard, but it is a very, very active, but happy and harmonious place. So I think that we should really pay a lot of attention to the panelists who were speaking and the strategies that they had. And just thanks to everyone.
Yeah, thank you as well.
Joel Schrock, you're next.
There we go. Sorry, it took me a second to get going here. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's input here today. The panelists have been fantastic. And really, if we are trying to look at conservation, really what we've seen in a lot of areas, especially down in Santa Cruz, is that actually welcoming mountain bikers and creating appropriate trails for them is one of the better ways to reduce road trail construction. If you look at Santa Cruz mountains out at Demo, they basically have 4 trails that run out there, but meanwhile out at Briones Regional Park, they have about 30 of them, which are all built illegally. And so really, if we're trying to reduce trail construction, the best way to do that is to provide trail access. And the kids these days, that's how they get out there. I've got a 7-year-old, and it's like, we don't go hiking, but what he wants to do is get out and go ride. And we need trail access in order to do that. But thanks everybody for their time tonight.
Yeah, thank you as well.
Matthew Mirato.
Okay, sorry, I think I'm unmuted now. I feel like I'm a broken record at this point, but after all those thoughts on the panelists, which I thought were pretty enlightening, since it does exemplify a case where the access or increased accessibility for cyclists does benefit everyone involved. And I feel that on the watershed, where we look at the problems of erosion, protecting habitat and biodiversity, if we make our trail use more sustainable, because at the end of the day, recreationalists aren't going anywhere, we can really benefit our environment in the long run and the function of the watershed too. So it's my hope that by engaging more user groups, we'll be able to provide for a better habitat. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate your thoughts and perspective on how we can all engage as stewards in the watershed.
Aaron S. is next.
Hey, thanks for putting this on tonight. Really appreciate it. I'm expecting a little bit of pushback from some environmentalists about, building new bike-specific trails on the mountain. And I think one thing to keep in mind is there's also this looming wildfire danger that we have. And, I always think about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, there was a small grass fire kind of in the Ridge Road corner of Tamarancho, and you can see right where the fire comes up to the trail and then stops. And the fire department was able to use that trail as a natural fire break. So, if there is a huge fire on the mountain, and you're trying to protect your water quality, you're going to have a lot of sedimentation and ash runoff. So anything you can do, including putting in new trails and building fire breaks, is just going to be all for the better, and it can also benefit the recreationalists as well.
Great, thanks for the comment.
Nona Dennis.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have something that's really a question. I'm naive about mountain biking, except what I observe and what I've learned over the years. But I want to ask, I keep hearing user experience. And in my view, the bike community represents multiple different kinds of user experience. Many of you are what I would call trail riders, and there's no great problem here. Then it gets technical. And then when does it turn into downhill? When does it turn into free ride? When does it turn into dirt jumping and so forth? I'm not certain, but many of you are pursuing that. But that makes a huge difference in understanding it's not one experience, but many experiences, even for hikers. It's runners, it's joggers, it's walkers with dogs and so forth. So we need to break that out and perhaps look at some different, rather singular kinds of experience and not really aim for those that are highly technical, at least in the mountain bike community.
Thanks, Nona. I appreciate the comment on just the various experiences that visitors are looking for. Who's up next, Brian?
Chris Tufts.
There we go. Well, I had a separate comment, but as a multi-use user of the watershed, maybe I'll at least touch on Nona's question, which is that I'm a trail runner, I'm a hiker with small children, and I'm also a cyclist. And I'd say that to your question, there's really a way you control that by the way you build a trail. So you might, when you don't have a lot of sort of advanced features, a lot of jumps, a lot of aggressive grades, and you control the grade as you build a trail for bike access, you can control that experience. And you can, that's not, I think, what a lot of people are talking about. We're talking about just kind of granting some access and tapping into what I wanted to say, which is a vast resource of volunteerism around the cyclist community to help upgrade trails, to make things better, to not make things aggressive and crazy technical, but make it more equal than it is today. I ran out of time, but hopefully that helps. Thanks.
Thank you for the comment.
Okay, Theodore.
Am I off mute?
Yep.
Yeah, you're good.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you, Sean. Awesome process so far. Great meeting. The panelists were absolutely terrific. Thanks, Nona, for bringing up that insight. There is a very big diversity of experience across the mountain bike community. People like to do different things. People like to use the watershed totally differently. And I definitely agree that if we can agree on ways to make the watershed more inclusive for all of these different use types, the mountain bike community, I know for sure, and I think the broader community will definitely step up and help make this a reality.
Great, thanks for the comment.
Larry's next.
Oh, there. Okay, you have to allow me. I get it now. I would like to second Tom Boss's comment. I thought it was very thoughtful on conservation, and I won't repeat what he said, and also what Nona is addressing, and that, as we go forward with this, to keep in our minds that this is one of the richest biodiversities we're going to find anywhere, and we've got something close to 1,000 rare and endangered species on this watershed, so that as we're planning this through, that is at the top of the list, that we're making certain that we're not in our quest to have a recreation management plan doing more damage than good to the facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And I think we'll explore some more of that on November 9th when we go out and see Azalea Hill. So more to come on that topic. Who's next, Brian?
Sammy.
Hello. So as a mountain biker in this process, and to borrow a phrase that Sean used earlier tonight, I'm not standing here with any single flag. I'm not hung up asking MMWD to double down on the status quo. I'm here, I'm ready to volunteer, and I'm ready to follow the models proven to work by organizations like Santa Cruz Mountain Trail Stewardship and to help achieve the outcomes that were described by Brian and Matt. I'm also committed to the diversity and access that was mentioned by Aurora. I champion multi-benefit solutions, and I'm really glad that MMWD is looking at these organizations for successful solutions. And by successful, I mean for the most important stakeholder, which is the environment and the watershed around Marin Municipal Water District. Yeah, so that's all I want to say is I'm here, I'm ready to volunteer, and I'm really excited about tonight. Thanks for everyone's time.
Yeah, thank you as well.
Galen is next.
Thank you. Others have said it before me way more eloquently, but I really want to thank and commend the panel for their participation. And I want to, I think we have a wonderful opportunity here. Those organizations are a wonderful resource right in our backyards. And I think we have a tremendous amount to learn from them, especially when it comes to multimodal recreation and adaptive management plans. Really hope we get to see more of their input in this process going forward. And that's all from me.
All right, thank you.
Nate.
Hi, I just want to echo what I said in the breakout room. I've extensively volunteered with kids at White Hill and Drake, Archie Williams, including in the watershed. And the only way most teenagers can access the watershed is by bike. They don't drive or they don't have a car. So bike limitations in the watershed are essentially red lines on how teenagers can use the watershed. They're essentially off limits to teenagers because that's the only way they can access the watershed. Welcoming, enabling their access will make them more engaged, not just for preserving the watershed, but other public lands as well. And I hope the board takes into account the real world successes that multiple jurisdictions have had that have opened up trails to bicycles, including successful solutions like even odd day access, one-way trails, and other mitigation. And as Larry said, we should look at the science, and there's a lot of it out there in making these determinations. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Next is a call-in number. Last four digits are 1402.
James Holmes, Larkspur. I appreciate all the thoughts and efforts, but I do believe we should pause the recreation plan process until the concurrent water supply study is completed and the proposals for expanded supply and their costs are fleshed out. All the water supply alternatives are likely to be hugely expensive, and there simply will not be spare funding left for substantial trail redesign, management, etc. And yet in the breakout session, people referred several times to added resources. Bottom line, we need more water, then we need more recreation, and we need to minimize increased ratepayer burdens. Recreation should be a distant third priority and treated as such. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the comments.
Mike is next.
Hey, thank you guys. I just want to reiterate something or a point I made in the breakout session, which was, this recreation plan, in order for it to be successful and sustainable in the long run, really should just be a starting point, and continued interaction and iteration with all the user groups is what will make this successful and make it, the watershed itself successful.
Great, thanks for the comment. We appreciate it.
Annabelle.
Hello. This is partly repeating what I said earlier. A huge call out and thank you to everybody who presented today. It was amazing. And this is really just, as a mother of 3 teenage daughters, I just want to call out the appreciation we have for, the nature available to us and really the importance of it. Particularly, on a teenage girls, from teenage girl standpoint, from social, emotional, mental health. My girls go out, they come back talking about the views, the weather they saw, the wildlife they saw, the flowers they saw out there, their friends they ran into, and they come back as different people ready to, kind of re-enter the world that they have to deal with. And the more we can do to support that, the better. And they're also out there willing to help. They're out working on trail days whenever possible. And so I think it's a win-win to get them out there and put them to work too. So thank you for everything you do.
Yeah, thank you, Annabelle. Appreciate the comments.
Vernon.
There you go, Vernon.
Okay, thank you. Well, this has been a really good meeting. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for bringing in the consultants. I think getting the outsiders here really helps provide a more non-biased perspective here. And just wanted to point out that all of the neighboring land agencies around us have also been working on this. GGNRA, NPS, California State Parks, and the county open space have all had to deal with the increase of mountain bikers as a user group. And they are addressing it, and they are all working on a way to incorporate trails for mountain biking with change of use processes, new trail construction, and various tools in the toolkit. So I'm glad to see that Marin Municipal Water District will no longer be the odd man out or the elephant in the room. I'm glad to see some conversation going on here, and I look forward to a more equitable future. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the comment, Vernon.
Matt Richmond.
Oh, maybe I need to unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good, Matt.
Great. Yeah, it was great to hear from Brian and Matt with, Brian with Santa Cruz Land Trust and Matt with the Trail Stewardship. As an ecology, I worked extensively on the San Vicente Redwoods biological resources side in the public access plan. There was many natural resources that were identified on that property, and including a healthy mountain lion population. And I know that a comprehensive multi-use trail system is currently being built, which is great to see. So I'm optimistic that we can balance the recreation needs and the sensitive natural resources. It's achievable, and it's happening in a lot of other places. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the comment.
Eric Cutter.
There we go. Hi, I make 2 quick comments. Really appreciated the panel and all the great thoughts from Santa Cruz and other areas that seem very positive. And I guess in response to this discussion, it just fundamentally feels very short-sighted to think of conservation first and recreation a distant third for an area that is, north of San Francisco and surrounded by 7 million people. And it's more about engaging the users in beneficial ways, steering them away from sensitive areas, getting them engaged in maintaining the trails and setting up the recreation in all the ways we've been talking about to make it beneficial for all. And this is really reinforced when I went for a bike ride right after COVID. If you all, I'm sure many of you remember, right after COVID, this was the only area people could go. It was completely overwhelmed with visitors, but it was just super beautiful to see hundreds of people on the top of Mount Tam enjoying the sunset, because that's what they had, the only place they had to go. And that's just the reality of the water district. But it really sounds like there's a lot of great solutions to engage people, and just viewing recreation as a distant third, I don't see how that's going to work.
All right, thanks for the comment, Eric. We appreciate it.
Okay, Patrick.
Hi, thank you. I just want to say I really enjoyed the panel discussion tonight. I thought It was a good learning experience for the group. And I think that really set the tone for the meeting, made it more inclusive. Everyone came from a place where they're willing to listen to other people. Part of the panel I enjoyed the most, which I think maybe the path of least resistance here, is the conversion of fire roads to trails and how that can reduce sediment in our creeks into our water system, and how it can help with the habitat fragmentation and also build trails that are sustainable for all groups. Just seems like a good opportunity when we have 92 miles of fire roads. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the comment, Patrick.
And that's
Is
it,
that
Sean.
everyone? All right, thanks for the comments, everyone. We've got one more site visit rather, planned for November 9th. We're gonna do a tour of Azalea Hill Trail Restoration Project. We're gonna meet at the Bontempe parking area at 2 p.m. Parking is somewhat limited there, so think about that when you come. There's additional parking at Sky Oaks that you can then walk through the Sky Oaks Meadow and over to the Bontempe parking area. I think it's about a mile or so. And then we're gonna walk a portion of the Azalea Hill Trail project. We're not gonna see it all, but we're really gonna highlight kind of how the district planned that project, how we worked with various stakeholder groups to develop the plan, how we're realigning a social trail to create a multi-use trail, how we're creating structures over streams to reduce the impact the visitors were having, and then also how we're using our Project Restore from our roads and trails plan to decommission over 4 miles of social trail that was going through rare serpentine habitat. And that's a real lift to the environment there. And so we've been working on all those components, the bridges, the trail realignment, as well as the closing of social trails. And so we're gonna kind of walk about 1.5 miles of that. It's a pretty modest walk. But bring your hiking poles, your shoes. We'll try to figure out a place for bike parking, but bring a lock so you can lock your bike up. And then we're gonna have our next workshop on February 8th, where we're gonna start to explore best management practices. And we think we'll have a lot of the watershed survey data back by that time, so we'll try to highlight that. We'll also discuss recreation zoning with our partner from Oregon State, Ashley D'Antonio. So that's kind of what's to come on the future. And we appreciate everyone's time tonight, all the input you provided and the comments at the end. And thanks for your evening. Thanks for taking the time, and have a great evening. We appreciate it.